We are joined by His Royal Highness Muhammad Sanusi, the second Emir of Kano. Your Royal Highness, many thanks for talking with Reuters. You know, when we last spoke 2 years ago, back in 2013, Africa, the emerging markets, were the darlings of the market. People since then have been, to put it for want of a better phrase, running for the exits. How worried are you about growth in emerging markets in general and in your country?
I think a number of things have happened. First of all, the collapse in oil and commodity prices has not helped because the pace of diversification in Africa has not happened as fast as we thought it would. Having said that, there are a number of African countries that have done extremely well. Ethiopia has done extremely well in terms of structural reform. There has been a lot of progress in Kenya and Tanzania. I think the big economies have had major issues. Nigeria's had big issues with corruption, with the lack of oil savings and the collapse of oil price. South Africa has its own governance problems. Egypt has its own governance problems. So the biggest economies of Africa are the ones that have not done as well as they should. And this is the sad story in Africa.
I know you no longer wear the central bank hat, but how do you feel policymakers in your country are dealing with this crisis, if you like, when we look at the currency, when we look at oil revenue, the effect on the banking system in Nigeria? What is your general feeling about the way it's being handled?
Well, first of all, I did foresee difficulty. Remember, this is why I raised the whole issue of a lack of savings when oil price was high. I knew that oil price would come down and there would be challenges managing the currency. The central bank has made a choice, or the governor has made a choice to protect the exchange rate, and that seems to be a choice backed by the president, so it's also a political decision. The choice obviously has consequences. If you choose to protect the currency and maybe protect reserves, then you allowing the real economy to take the hit. And we've seen that with a slowdown in GDP. If I personally would have thought a more flexible approach to currency that would protect growth and attract a foreign capital would have been the best option.
That's what you would be doing if you were still central bank governor?
Yes, that's what I would be doing if I was governor, yes.
Okay. You know, we are at this conference on the Islamic economy. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. The concept of an Islamic economy, Islamic finance as part of that. How much of a game changer do you think this can be now?
I think Islamic finance offers an alternative, and it also offers diversification, and diversification is always good for risk management. The key element of Islamic finance that's always attractive to me is its connection to the real economy and its avoidance of speculation. So what that does is at times like this, when you've got fluctuating commodity prices, you've got fluctuating capital market prices, you're able to protect asset values and protect growth and jobs, and this is critical. So Islamic finance has shown over and over again that even if it's not the biggest part of the economy, if it's not the strongest element in the system, it is the most resilient in terms of crisis and being able to withstand it. Now, obviously, it's got to be accompanied by sound risk management, by strong economic policies. It cannot exist in a vacuum, but all things being equal, it is something that everyone should look at as a tool for risk management.
Do you think the banks, the Islamic banks, are doing enough, though, for the economy? And it's something I sat on a panel with the chief executives yesterday, and this was the big question. Are they doing enough for the man on the street? Are they differentiating themselves enough from conventional banks?
I think banks in general have not done well as far as the man on the street is concerned. Part of the reason, obviously, is the drive to very large capital base, which means they're able to make big loans, and that pushes the loan book to the upper segments of the economy, and that's true of conventional banks, also true of Islamic banks. The more capital they have, the more they're likely to find it more economical to do a small number of large good loans than do a large number of small loans. However, with the use of technology and use of cards and mobile phones, if they leverage that, they will be able to make and manage thousands of small loans. And I think that's what they need to do. Take things like borrow from a bank like Equity Bank of Kenya, which has used the mobile phone and mobile money to basically provide credit to the man on the street. So it's about how do you tap into the experience of other institutions and then adopt technology for that, because it's really about costs and risk management. I don't think we've done enough. I think we should focus more on it.
You've done a lot, of course. You've been very outspoken. You've been a crusader against corruption, against nepotism, against financial mismanagement. What more do you want to see your own government doing, but also other governments in Muslim countries doing to tackle this problem so that this problem ultimately goes away?
Okay, well, in Nigeria, we're lucky in that we have elected a president that has a very strong reputation for fighting corruption, and that's the first step. Now he's got a number of challenges. One challenge, obviously, is how to reform the legal and judicial system to make sure that you actually bring people to book, because it's one thing to know that someone has committed a crime. It's another thing for the judges and the courts to be on the same page. So the reform and this idea of setting up special courts where you look for the best judges and fast track. I mean, I have that experience. I removed bank CEOs. I brought them to trial. 3-4 years, they were able to pay for the best lawyers. One legal technicality or another, an adjournment and all that, and really we haven't had the convictions that we thought we should have, and the cases are really open and shut cases that could have been concluded in a few months. So this is something he's got to look at. The second challenge I think the president has is to remember that he's not going to be the president forever. Right. So sometimes it's not enough to fight corruption. Sometimes it's not enough to fix leakages. It's also about reforming the system so that the next corrupt president or minister will not have the opportunity to do what was done in the past. So if you take the National Oil Company, it's simply got to be unpacked. And you've got to remove subsidy system, for example. It's not enough to say, oh, I can administer the subsidies without corruption. Well, when you leave, the subsidies can be abused. So you've got to look at what would happen if Buhari is no longer the president of Nigeria. And I think these reforms are important, and this is what the Muslim world needs to do. Basically, take away from the state all those activities that are the site of rent seeking, and make them more transparent and more competitive and more open. And that is the only way to fight corruption. You
have talked a lot about an uneven society, poverty, unemployment, lots of reasons for the youth of today to be radicalized. And of course, your fight with Boko Haram is something that is making headlines. Are you satisfied with what is being done now? Are you satisfied that the root cause is slowly being addressed?
I think the first battle we won was getting people to realize that what may appear as a religious crisis could actually have its roots in poverty and unemployment. And the political authorities do understand that. Now, obviously, you've got to deal with an immediate situation, so there's got to be a military solution, a military security intelligence solution. But the long-term solution to Boko Haram has to be in a more even development process, in creating opportunities. If you look at the areas where you've got Boko Haram, if you look at the every human development index, from life expectancy to adult literacy to child enrollment to girl child education to maternal death, they simply heading south. So you've got to deal with the indices of human development, and that you've got to invest in irrigation, in electricity, in infrastructure, in education for that to happen. And that's more medium and long term.
And that is a message that I imagine you want to send out to everyone here, all the governments here, and indeed governments around the world now.
Yes, I mean, it's not just Nigeria, it's not just Africa. I mean, if you look at, when you look at what happened in Tunisia, if you look at Saudi Arabia, if you look at so-called rich Arab countries, when you dig into the statistics, you do have poverty in those rich countries, you do have youth unemployment in those countries, and you have a lot of disaffectioned youth, and that is a time bomb they're sitting on. It's very easy to look at beautiful buildings and beautiful roads and beautiful bridges and princes in inexpensive cars and say this is a rich country. You've got to actually go down deep and see what is the man on the street like, and that is critical. So we are all sitting on this time bomb, and we've got to work on it.
Very, very, very quickly and finally, and back to this issue of Boko Haram. Can you isolate Boko Haram, do you think? And how quickly can you make that happen?
I think Boko Haram is much easier to isolate than ISIS. We've got a territory, we've got neighboring countries, Cameroon, Chad, Niger. We can work with them, and the French obviously can help us by working with the Francophone countries. The Nigerian government is now serious about dealing with them, so you can deal with Boko Haram. What you cannot do is say that you can bring it to an end immediately. Look at Afghanistan, look at Iraq. You will always have isolated incidents of people who sleeper cells. You have people who from time to time will cause trouble. It will take us a long time to totally eliminate Boko Haram, but I think we've degraded them. I think we can cut off their supply of arms. I think we can cut off their communications. I think they can be surrounded and actually dealt with militarily. But that is just the first step.
Your Royal Highness, many thanks for talking with Reuters today. It's been a pleasure to see you again. His Royal Highness Muhammad Sanusi, the second Emir of Kano, talking with us here on the sidelines of the GIES summit in Dubai. That is it from me. I'm Axel Threlfall. This is Reuters.